One thing that struck me about that panel is just how complex this plant is. And I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in the economics, the survival of this industry, that we forget the breadth and the depth of what this plant can truly provide, because it is magical. So, without further ado, we're going to welcome Tim Seymour and Jason Wild to the stage, because now you're officially at the head of the table. So please give them a round of applause and welcome them in.
A lot of seats, a lot of microphones. All right, Jersey, great to be here. My name's Tim Seymour. I am the portfolio manager of CNBS, which is an active cannabis ETF. I'm also a guy that's spent a lot of time in this industry. At 5 p.m., I talk about cannabis on CNBC when they let me. And so it's really great to once again be back here with, first of all, getting the band back together. Congrats to the Ignited guys. Jason Wild, to my left, is definitely somebody that this industry has seen a lot of in different forms over the years. I'll let him give the background. We don't have a ton of time, but Jason is chairman of TerrAscend, which is one of the largest multi-state operators in the country. They're a company that's made a major presence in Jersey and considers this to be a flagship foundation of their business. Jason also, though, arrived in cannabis by being an investor like me, like many of you who are not also operators and strategics and whatnot. So today's conversation can be, I think, a good combination of both. He's a great guy to talk to anytime, but he's a particularly great guy to talk to understand the dynamic of what TerrAscend's doing in Jersey, but also just what's going on in this market. So, Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Give the audience, your quick background, just so we can frame the conversation around TerrAscend in Jersey.
Sure. So I'm originally a pharmacist. I actually got my pharmacy license in New Jersey. I was a pharmacist for a couple of years back in the late 90s in Totowa, New Jersey. Around that, about a year into being a pharmacist, I realized I liked the stock market and investing a whole lot better. I liked investing in drug companies as opposed to filling prescriptions. So I started a fund in 1998. We've been around now for almost 30 years. About 10 years ago, I started looking at companies in the cannabis space. I've always been a fan personally of cannabis, and I thought, what could be more fun and hopefully more profitable than investing in cannabis companies. Hasn't worked out exactly.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, again, when I first met Jason, he was running around in Canada before anybody was, investing in some of the early names that later became the big names that we know in Canada, maybe 2 or 3 iterations ago, actually, when the stocks were worth owning. Let's dive in, because as chairman at TerrAscend, I think you're somebody that also you've not only been early in Jersey. TerrAscend has made this a really important market and a high growth market, obviously, but you're somebody that's also sat at the main table of call it CEOs and players in the industry, especially at a time when the macro in the industry is such an important dynamic for really unlocking valuations, but unlocking a lot of the dominoes that need to fall here. I think it would be remiss not to just quickly ask you your view on macro before we get into New Jersey. Clearly, there's been an extraordinary series of headlines in the last couple months, but I kind of presume Schedule 3 is done and dusted, but that's probably not what the market's doing here. So we're waiting for Bondi. Are we waiting for Godot? I don't know, but I'm curious your view on just some of the details to follow here. I'm actually really curious your view on the next macro headline you want to see hit that's not rescheduling, because I'm going to take it as a given this is happening, even though I understand we're cautious on that news flow.
Yes, well, I think we're all a little snake bitten as well. For years we thought safe banking was right on the verge of happening, and it didn't happen. And now for the last 3 years or so, we've been waiting on rescheduling. President Biden started the review. It sort of came to a little bit of a stall or a dead end about a year ago. And now President Trump signed an executive order on December 18th directing the DOJ to reschedule. I forgot the exact wording, but as expeditiously as possible or something to that effect. I think that at least all the public stocks, they all sold off the minute that the executive order came out. I think it's probably because a lot of people assumed that thought that he was going to sign and that cannabis was going to be rescheduled. I think, you read some news reports and even the journalists, some of them think that cannabis has already been rescheduled.
Yep.
So that hasn't happened yet. We're waiting on it. It should be hopefully any day or any week. But we're certainly getting close. That should help the industry because at least the industry will be taxed like every other industry in the country, not where they can't deduct their operating expenses, which every other type of industry can do. In terms of next steps, not to put the cart before the horse, because we still need to get rescheduling over.
Let's do that, though. I mean, because there have been times also markets have tried to price in what it might mean in terms of seeing this free cash flow. There's a number of your peers that have talked about how that money's already kind of been in the bank and they've moved on. What would be the most, and this is a combination of what is realistic to follow on from here. There's clearly a pie in the sky. But what would be realistic follow-through? This could be something much more subtle than maybe we're thinking about. I don't know. What realistic meets actually the next great, exciting headline?
Well, this is the first time we've had a Republican president who's been supportive of cannabis. So over all these years, as I mentioned, safe banking has failed several times. You would think that now with the president behind it, or at least a Republican president behind it, and generally, it's been the Republicans in Congress who have not been as supportive as the Democrats have been. You would think that he should be able to get them over the finish line. In terms of what we would need in a safe banking or safer banking bill, would be I think the biggest positive would be the ability to list in the U.S. Right now, as I'm sure everybody realizes, the U.S. operators. The operators that operate here can only list on Canadian exchanges, and there's just a lot less depth to the market. There's less participants on foreign exchanges than there are in the United States. So that should help a lot from a cost of capital perspective. There's a lot of companies that have high levels of debt, mainly because the stocks have all gone down, in almost a straight line for the last 5 years. So they've raised capital via debt. It would be nice if these companies had the ability to list on U.S. exchanges. They could trade at the multiples that the Canadian operators that are able to list in the U.S., their multiples are 2 to 3 times higher than U.S. operators. So that would be a huge positive for the industry, being able to be listed. I think another huge positive would be credit cards.
Yeah.
I don't know if, most people are probably like me, where they barely carry cash around anymore. And the fact is that U.S. dispensaries can only take cash. At least the legal ones can only take cash. So the ability to take credit cards, I think, would drive a significant increase in business. It would also help from the aspect of running the business, because we wouldn't be dealing with that much cash and the Brinks trucks and all of the rest. So I think those are two major positives. I think one other big positive, even from rescheduling, is that some of the states that have not gone rec yet, some of those states, once rescheduling happens and the Republicans in that state have cover, then there's a much better chance that rec would be approved in those states as well. Pennsylvania is a good example.
Yeah, and even Virginia now finally getting the follow through on their license on the retail side. The steady drumbeat of states coming to market with an adult market, to me, has been the quiet, positive that continues to show where this is going. And I think the reality is that institutional listings, the follow through from exchange listings, the follow through from institutional investors is really that's the multiple changer for the industry, and there's a bit of a chicken and the egg here, because I think a lot of institutions could own U.S. cannabis players either by swap or in the over-the-counter markets, recognize that it's debatable, but it recognizes that there's a valuation construct that's very interesting right now, especially because these companies are trading probably 60% cheap to where they were going into the elections in 24, and probably 30% cheap to where they were at the peak of August when we thought this news was taking place. This news has come through. So it's a fascinating time, and I think we've all, many out here have waited for these headlines. How about strategics coming into the space? I can remember where I was when, we heard about Constellation, and where, there's been other big name players who have come into the space. There's certainly a lot of scorched earth from where that is. Do you think CPG, are these conversations, whether you can talk about them in concept, that TerrAscend is having? Do you get the sense that the largest players who bring critical mass and who bring an established foundation of real assets are interesting to somebody right now?
Yes, we've had some conversations. I think a lot of them have seen, though, Constellation, the bad experience that they had by investing early in Canopy. They were really investing in Canopy for the future of being able to enter the U.S. And Canopy didn't work out so well for Constellation. So
we don't need to dive into that, because there's a lot of reasons why that didn't work out, and there's a lot of just bad judgment that went on. But this is that CPG sector that all we have heard about is the place that some of these other companies want to invest. What do you think is holding them back?
Yeah. Well, I think what's holding them back is that they can't invest or own direct stakes in U.S. operators while they're listed on a U.S. exchange. So I think that the uplisting, in addition to unlocking a higher multiple for independent cannabis operators, it also opens up the industry to being invested in, or even some companies being possibly acquired by larger CPG companies that are listed in the U.S. I think that's what I think until we have U.S. listing, you're not going to see many deals between CPG companies and U.S. operators. But once U.S. listing happens, that should open up pretty significantly. I mean, all of these, especially the operators that are in beer and wine and spirits. I mean, every other day you read an article about how alcohol demand is down significantly. I think that cannabis is a big piece of that. I think there's other pieces as well. I have one of these watches that measures my sleep, and if I have one or two drinks in a night, I wake up and my watch says that I'm practically not alive.
Yes.
But I think people are realizing that alcohol is, so they used to, the alcohol companies used to say that, 1 to 2 drinks a day is healthy, and people are starting to realize that, now there's new data that say you shouldn't even have more than 1 to 2 drinks a week. So these CPG companies, their market is dwindling. This is a growing market in the cannabis space. They're certainly very interested in getting in, but they can't do it while if they invested in these companies, they'd be disqualified from listing on U.S. exchanges.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, nothing worse than having your watch tell you had a shitty night's sleep, and then dealing with that for the rest of the day when you weren't sure what happened the night before.
100%.
And I would just, anecdotally, I would say there's no question that the alcohol, whether it's the brands, but it's certainly the distro companies. I mean, all we hear about is their interest in the hemp-derived THC beverage space, and that's a controversial issue for another panel. But there's no question, big alcohol is here or wants to be here. Let's talk about the Garden State, and let's talk about good old Jersey, because really smart for the Ignited guys. I saw Jason walk in the room somewhere. Again, congrats on the guys that have been in the middle of this this conversation, putting on a great event in a market that is extremely important. And I guess I want to talk about where we are relative to the early days when this was like many new markets that were limited license markets. Pricing, margins, everything was extraordinary. It went through this period where even some of those folks that had licenses didn't have the money to develop and really build out CapEx. And so I want to understand where we see that. And again, TerrAscend, early, committed, and follow through. And so I think you've got a slightly different perspective. Talk about, I guess, really, where are we in terms of the build out of Jersey here and the competitive landscape around you?
Yeah, so Jersey, as you mentioned, is a very important market for TerrAscend. It's the first market that we've built from the ground up. It wasn't, via acquisition the way we entered some other states. When Rec first opened, I think it was about 3 years ago or almost 4 years ago at this point, we had 2 of, I believe, 12 dispensaries that were open in the state. At this point, there are over 200 dispensaries, I believe, in the state. It certainly has become more competitive, but we never expected it to, we never expected to be
12.
To be only 12. And certainly opening up more stores expands the overall market from a total market size. But if you were one of these companies that do really well in the beginning, mainly because there was no competition, then you're not going to fare very well as things get more competitive. I'm proud to say that we're still one of the top operators in the state. We sell wholesale to almost every dispensary in the state. We still have we have three dispensaries now that we operate. And certainly prices have come down by almost by about 50% over that period of time, at least from a flower perspective and from concentrates and vapes and all of that as well. But this is you need to be able to compete. Companies that are just 2 of 12 very often they don't know what it's like to really compete. Fortunately, we've operated in other states that have been more competitive. So
yes, you have.
It helped us raise our game. And the fact is, it all comes. Any consumer products company, it all comes down to: are you making the products that consumers want? And if you're always putting the customer first in terms of what drives all of your everyday decisions, I think usually you should have a pretty good chance of competing.
We're again in New Jersey. My guess is there are regulators and some of the folks that are helping to shape policy here or will shape it from here. What's it like to operate in New Jersey? We've seen other states that have been a lot more difficult to get the job done. And again, as always, and part of what I think this industry feels really, really is adamant, it feels is very important, is operating within the construct of regulation, operating with the construct of best practices, and obviously safety and security. So talk about that and what it's been like in Jersey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jersey has been a great market. I mean, that's why it's been such a successful market for us. As long as you have a compliance orientation, then New Jersey is a market where you should be able to do reasonably well. You mentioned there are other states that are, it's almost an adversarial relationship between the regulators and the operators. I think New York is a good example.
I was going to say, hey, forget about it. What's going on with New York?
Yes, New York has been tough. We've stayed out of New York. I actually moved out of New York to Florida several years ago because I was so angry with the way that the regulators
New York market progressed. Yeah,
exactly. But New Jersey has been an excellent market to operate in. The regulators care; they care about what they're doing, but they're not. They're certainly not looking to punish any of the operators or punish the large operators or anything like that. They just want to make sure that that patients and customers get safe products.
Right.
And as long as you're on the same page with them, they're usually going to have we've had a pretty harmonious relationship with the regulators.
It would be a small miracle, much like walking out of here and hearing about exchange listings were passed today, but that we have more than a minute 10 left on our panel. I assume we do not, and we like to run a tight ship here. So in the minute we have left, Jason, I guess outlook for Jersey, whether either segments that you think are going to continue to evolve or grow, a part of the business that you've been most impressed by, pricing, margin profile, this state as a model for what you're doing in other states. The floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the market will continue to get more competitive, and that's generally been the rule, not the exception, in terms of most states. And we certainly are up to compete. We don't want to have super limited markets because, as I mentioned, it doesn't make you any better as an operator or drive you necessarily to always have the best products when you feel like the customers are not demanding it. We want to be held to a high standard. We think we have been, and we think that's why we continue to do well in the state. In terms of some different product lines and things like that, pre-rolls are certainly a fast-growing.
Good old friend.
Yeah, exactly. That's something where we're coming out with. We'll be coming out with some line extensions and some new SKUs that we'll be launching in the state. And something that we've always focused on from the very beginning is the highest quality flower, because the fact is you can't. Cannabis consumers are too discerning and are too smart, and if you try passing off product that is not at a high standard, then you have a way of very quickly losing your customers. So we're always focused on getting better from a cultivation perspective. New strains, we're always pheno hunting for new strains and things like that. And like I said earlier, just bringing customers what they want and what they need. If you're focused on that, then you should usually be in pretty good shape.
Awesome. Well, here's to high quality, here's to getting better, and here's to the Garden State. Thank you very much, Jason Wild. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.